I'm going to say we're going to go ahead and get started here. So, Kevin, we good?
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna run our own show at this point.
Yeah, hang on. What Steve will do is read a short statement from Ryan, and then he'll be available for questions.
So, I appreciate all of you guys being here today. Ryan apologizes for not being able to be here, but he did prepare a statement. So if you'll bear with me, I'll read through it. I'm sorry that I can't be at the track in person, but I asked Steve to take a moment to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude for all the support that was shown last week to both me and my family. The outpouring of emotion from not only the NASCAR community, but across the country has been truly humbling. I want to personally thank everyone, including the man upstairs, for their support, encouragement, and the numerous offers of assistance. We always say that the NASCAR community is one big family, and never has that been more evident to me than after seeing this family rally together and provide the comfort and support that has been shown to my family and me over the past few days. The calls and visits from the NASCAR executives and my friends and competitors have been truly uplifting. I want to thank everyone involved in my care, especially the staff at Halifax Medical Center, where I'm convinced I received the best care available. I'm confident the efforts of each of those trained professionals played a major role in where I'm sitting today. And to the entire NASCAR organization, led by Jim France, thanks for being by my side the entire time. You truly stepped up to support me unconditionally when it mattered most. Most importantly, I have to thank the guys back at the Roush Fenway Racing Shop that built me a car not only fast enough to lead the final seconds of the Daytona 500, but strong enough to do its job under great distress, allowing me to survive such an accident. I am truly indebted to each of you, and it is unlikely I will ever be able to properly express to you how much the diligent effort with which you conduct your craftsmanship has affected me and my family. I hope you took pride in the photograph of me walking out of the hospital hand in hand with my daughters on Wednesday. Thank you. I can't wait to get back in your race car. I was fortunate to avoid any internal organ damage or broken bones. I did sustain a head injury for which I'm currently being treated. The doctors have been pleased with my progression over the last few days. Again, I want to thank each of you, from my partners, teammates, and competitors, and each and every fan across the country. Thank you, everyone, for the unparalleled concern and unwavering support, and to the media, who has acted with such respect and class during this time. I've spoken with Jack Roush, and he has assured me that the number 6 car will be waiting and ready for my return. I'm looking forward to getting behind the wheel and battling for another race win in the Roush Fenway Ford. Ryan Newman. So I also spoke to Ryan just before I came on here, and in talking to him, he wanted to reiterate to me again that his goals for this year haven't changed. His objective is to win the 2020 Cup Championship. So hopefully that gives you a little insight into his mindset. I will take questions in a minute. What I'd like to do now is give you a little perspective from Roush Fenway. So I'm going to piggyback a little on the themes that Ryan touched upon in his statement. Probably have a little repetition, but I think that's probably appropriate based on the support that we've received over the last few days. So I think everybody understands that, you know, the events of Monday and the days that followed, it was really kind of a surreal experience for the entire Roush Fenway organization, and probably kind of fit right in the definition of an emotional roller coaster. You know, we went from what we thought was seconds away from winning the Daytona 500 with Ryan, locking into the playoffs, and also having our other car, the 17 Fastenal Ford, finish 4th in Chris Buescher's first race with us. It was looking like it was going to be a storybook race for us and a great start to the season. And all that changed in an instant, and we go from not caring about the race, not caring about the competition. In fact, I'm not sure that we knew who had actually won the race until a few hours later, because the whole focus was on Ryan's safety and well-being. And when you see a teammate and a friend and part of your family in that situation. So during that process, obviously, Ryan mentioned the gratitude he had towards the Halifax Medical Center. I also want to recognize another group that was an anchor to us during the entire time, and that's the NASCAR leadership team. When we arrived at the hospital that night, NASCAR with Matt Humphrey was already there coordinating logistics. And then during that entire period, so that evening and the days that followed, Jim France, Lisa France, Mike Helton, Steve Phelps, Steve O'Donnell, and Eric Nyquist, and Ben Kennedy were either there at the hospital or providing support in whatever way that we needed. And I know that really lifted the spirits of Ryan's family and our entire team to see that. And I think it speaks to the caliber of people that they are when you look at the lengths that they went to support us, and also gives us a lot of faith about that we're in pretty good hands pretty good hands going forward. For the Roush Fenway organization, it was a pretty agonizing few days, obviously a brutal period that night, as we had a lot of our team members down at the end of pit road, just feet from where the accident finished. And there was obviously a lot of uncertainty at that point. And I can tell you, to a person on the corporate side and the competition side, there wasn't a single one at Roush Fenway that actually wanted to go home that night. In fact, if we had acquiesced to their wishes, they would have camped out at the hospital waiting until they could actually see Ryan with their own two eyes. Thankfully, they kind of relented and reluctantly went back because we still had a job to do. And it was a pretty Herculean task for that organization this week. What we had is a short week to get to the West Coast because of the rain delay, and then we also had the uncertainty of who was going to drive the 6th car, how do you upfit it, how do you get the right seat in that. And so they flew home that night. We're back in the shop at 6:30 a.m. Tuesday morning, and then we actually worked basically 24-hour shifts so we could be here. And I think the results speak for themselves, and that we feel like we've got two pretty fast race cars, and it's a tremendous testament to the effort, the work ethic, and the passion that whole group showed. And I'm extremely proud to be associated with that organization and that group of individuals. Also want to thank our partners for the just overwhelming number of reach outs that we received for assistance. I think, as some of you guys are aware, Koch Industries was on the car with Ryan in the Daytona 500. That was their first foray into NASCAR. So pretty interesting introduction as they come in and get the emotional highs and lows in a compressed period of about 30 seconds. But when we look at what happened over the next few days with Koch Industries, Castrol, Acronis, Wyndham, Oscar Mayer, Coca-Cola, Fastenal, Fifth Third, Sunny D, and Ford, all just relentlessly giving us offers for assistance, trying to help Ryan, trying to help his family. It made us just recognize how blessed we were to have such a good partner group. Similarly, we received all sorts of reach outs from other drivers. A lot of the drivers visited Ryan, other team owners, team presidents, and just across the industry. And I do need to take a minute to give a special thanks to Chip Ganassi and Jim Campbell at Chevy for allowing us to put Ross Chastain in the car. Once we understood that where Ryan's condition was and it wasn't life-threatening, we obviously had to shift to try to at least make sure that we continued to race and had this season move forward. And so Tuesday morning, I called both Chip and Jim to ask for their permission. And I will tell you, they were very short conversations because both of them immediately said, "You have our blessing," and offered unequivocally any support that they could provide to help us through this situation. We also talked to Colleague Racing and Ross's agents to put this together. And to me, we talk about NASCAR being one big family, and that was a pretty big testament to it, is that they each of them kind of put the personal above the professional. And we were in a tough situation, and it was nice to see our competitors step up and help us in that situation. On the team front, I also do want to address any lingering criticisms of Joe Gibbs Racing. From my perspective, they did absolutely nothing wrong. They had just won the Daytona 500, which should be a celebratory time. And I know that the minute that they were informed that Ryan's situation was severe, he hadn't gotten out of the car, that they completely stopped and started praying for him. Denny came to the hospital that night. I heard from Coach Gibbs. We heard from Dave Alpern. And so we really appreciate the respect that they showed him. And it's nothing that I wouldn't expect from an organization with that integrity and that level of class. Lastly, and then we can get to some questions, I really do want to thank the media. I received a number of emails, texts, reach outs from many of you here today that were reaching out not as news reporters, but as friends and individuals generally concerned about the well-being of a member of the NASCAR community. And although we tried to do our best to get you guys updates, we fully recognize that there were a lot of gaps in those updates, and that in this day and age of instant communication, social media, that there was immense pressure on most of you out there to fill those gaps with speculation, conjecture, wild theories. And the reality of it is the regular NASCAR reporters didn't do that. And we really appreciate the respect that you showed us and how you approached the whole situation. So with that little bit of a monologue, why don't we, I'm not sure, do we have, all right, you want to do some questions?
Sure. So if you have a question, raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you. Please state your name and affiliation. We'll start with Jim.
Jim Utter, motorsport.com. Regarding Ross, could you talk a little bit more about the process? I understand Ross wasn't even in town, I believe, to have his seat fitted, and is his situation open-ended with you in regards to the 6 car, or is it possible you may end up having to use other drivers?
So, Jim, we'll start at the beginning there. I mean, the situation unfolded is that when we were at the hospital that evening, there was actually no discussion at that point because that wasn't the focus. You were 100% trying to, support the family, and just all of us were concerned about Ryan's situation at that point. Once we had learned of his status through his dad from the doctors, there was a group of us at Jack Roush, Kevin Kidd, Tommy Wheeler, Scott Graves, and myself and Mark Rushbrook from Ford, had a conversation about what was the right direction to go. And the first call that Kevin Kidd and I made was to Ross Chastain the next morning, along with Jim and Chip. And at this point, I would say it's open-ended because which I'll answer another question that I'm sure will come up, is that we don't have a timetable for Ryan's return. I can tell you what his timetable would like to be, which is as soon as possible, but there's some other hoops that he's got to jump through before that happens. And so right now we're just taking it one race at a time. Our arrangement with Ross is, if we need him, that he should be available.
Go right to PRN.
Mark Garrow, PRN. I was just going to ask, what kind of process does the team and Ryan have to go through now for him to gain clearance?
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is I'm thankful that we're actually even able to have this dialogue about that question, because that was not something that any of us were certain about when this happened. But it's a great conversation to be having. The reality of it is there's going to be 3 groups that are going to dictate when he returns, because he has expressed unequivocally that this is where he wants to be, and he wants to be back in a race car. And those 3 groups are going to be Ryan and his family, his doctors, and then NASCAR and their medical team. And our assumption is once all 3 of those sign off, then we'll see him back in a race car.
All right, we're going to go to Claire.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. 2 questions. Can you address Jack and Jack's reaction to this? He was at the hospital the night of. You guys are all scurrying around. Everybody's, pitching in. What's Jack saying about all this?
Sure. It was so I was with Jack. Jack and I were in the 17 pit box, and it was actually an interesting way that it played out. When the incident happened, we were watching on the screen, and then we started to go down towards the end of pit road where the car was. On our way down there, we were told Ryan is out of the car and he's in an ambulance heading to the hospital. So we actually took a hard left, didn't go down to where the car was, which was probably fine because we weren't going to do anything helpful or contribute anything anyways. But we went straight to the hospital, actually got to the hospital, had to grab a police officer on a motorcycle when we were trying to get out of the track because we were stuck, and he gave us a nice opening and ride to the hospital. We got there. Matt Humphrey from NASCAR was there already coordinating logistics. Mike Helton showed up soon after, but we were there actually before Ryan got there. And Jack's focus the whole time was, we need to kind of more crisis mode, and we need to make sure we're supporting the family. We need to make sure that everything's arranged at the hospital. Does he have all the medical care? And that was really the dialogue throughout the night. And then, quite frankly, we were on pins and needles, as I'm sure many of you were, waiting for that kind of first indication that it wasn't life-threatening. And, the way that it played out is the doctor spoke with Greg Newman, Ryan's dad, and then Greg immediately conveyed that to us, and probably within a minute after that is when we put out the statement, just to make sure that the fans understood that as well.
And then I also want to ask you about the challenges that you have. Like, what's the biggest challenge having a different guy in the car as Roush Fenway continues through a very important part of the season, and Ryan not being able to be in the car? Can he help? Can he assist? Will he be on the phone, or is he pretty much away from it until he returns?
So there's no doubt that there are challenges, but I think the sense of relief and the wave of relief that's kind of gone over our organization makes you recognize that these challenges pale in comparison to other challenges that we could have faced. And so I really do think you've seen everyone step up. I mean, you had challenges of changing the seat, and there's no doubt that when you look at Ross's situation, it's a tough situation. He's running 3 series this weekend. He's never been in any of our cars, but we thought that he was the right person to do it and had the right demeanor right character to be able to handle this. And as for Ryan, he's already been involved. He was on the phone with Scott Graves, his crew chief, calling him because I think he was watching practice. I believe he's talked to Ross. So he has been very active in trying to be involved in the direction of the team.
We're going to go to Bob.
Packers, Fox Sports. I don't know if you can say, but do you have any idea if the situation was ever dire, or was it pretty clear that his injuries were not life-threatening at the time he got to the hospital?
The first indication we got is what we passed along, that he was in serious condition and it wasn't life-threatening. So, as you can probably appreciate, I can't get into the medical conditions, obviously, because of HIPAA and other medical privacy laws. But the other piece of it is Ryan actually wants to be the one to be in front of you and answer those questions. So he and I talked about that, and he's kind of chomping at the bit to be back here. And I think he feels it'll be most appropriate for him to be behind the mic answering a lot of those questions.
And has he said anything to you about any changes he would like in the cars or changes to racing at Daytona and Talladega since the accident?
He hasn't specifically, but we haven't discussed that. He knows that he's going to get access to the vehicle. NASCAR has been phenomenal. They've given access to our organization, our engineers, to go over and look at the car, offered it to Ryan. I think everybody in here knows that Ryan has been an advocate of driver safety for many years. He uses his engineering degree and is very vocal, and so I have no doubt that he'll be in the middle of that. It's an ongoing effort to continue to improve the safety, but from my perspective, it's a testament to the safety that less than 48 hours he was able to walk away after that accident. And the reality is most sports have injury reports every week. The reason we don't is because it's pretty rare that we actually have an injury in this sport.
Go right up here.
Hi, Michelle Kane, ABC Good Morning America. I know you can't speak about the exact nature of Ryan's injuries, but can you tell us how it affected you when this happened? What was your emotional reaction?
I think it probably affected me in the same way that it affected a lot of members of our team, in that it's a hard dose of perspective. So you go from being nervous and anxious about the race and, thinking that you're about to have a fantastic start to the season and a vindication of a lot of the efforts you had over in the off season, to realizing that, those concerns aren't really that heavy and that weighty, and that really the important part is you just go to thinking that I hope he's all right, and I hope this doesn't impact him going forward. He has 2 young, beautiful daughters, and thankfully that several hours later we kind of got that news, and I think there really was a wave of relief over everybody in our organization. And there's a group at the hospital that included Mike Helton and Jim France and Jack, and I think there are a lot of prayers said, and I think a lot of people felt they were answered when we got that news.
Morning, Steve. Tom Zaleski, Iron County Today. There is precedent with getting a waiver for an injury to compete for a championship upon return. How long do you think you can keep that dream alive for him to compete for the championship before you have to say enough is enough and it won't work and you have to pull the plug?
We really don't know. I think we haven't crossed that bridge. I know what Ryan's perspective is that he recognized there's precedent. We haven't talked about this with NASCAR because it hasn't been high on the priority list, but it's something that I think in his mind he's going to figure out how he can get back here, get that waiver, and then go out and win a race. And so we are going to continue to kind of pursue that vision until we're told we can't. Yep, absolutely.
Justin Schuler, kicking the tires. Given Ryan's sense of humor, has he made any comments about the crash or anything like that in his road to recovery?
Yeah. I'm glad you recognize his sense of humor, because one thing, just as an aside, when Chris Buescher, who started with us this year, he was asked kind of what one of the most difficult things for him has been in the transition, and he said it's trying to figure out at times whether Ryan Newman is being serious or sarcastic. And I think we've seen that in our conversations in the last few days. So that personality type has not been impacted, but we haven't talked a whole lot about the actual race.
Go up here to Jeff.
Jeff Gluck from The Athletic. Steve, is there a possibility we could see Ryan back at the track before he's actually cleared to be back in a car?
It's a good question, Jeff. It's not something that we've discussed, but I wouldn't see any reason why not. I mean, I know his objective is to get back as quickly as he can to get in the car, but I could see the minute that Ryan is given the green light to be back at the track, he'll be back out there, and whether it's, you know, getting himself ready or helping Ross to prepare, I'm certain that that'll be high on his priority list.
Here to Jenna.
Steve, does it surprise you at all, Ryan's apparent invincibility? And is it true that he asked for donuts when he woke up?
Well, we'll start with the first question, then I'll get to the second one. It does not surprise me. I mean, he is as tough as they come, and it was also refreshing to be in the hospital room listening to his family make fun of him for having no neck and for being just completely thick. And there is truth to the rumor that when he heard there were donuts down in the room where we were all congregated, that he asked his dad to confiscate some and bring him back up to his room. So I don't know what happened to him, but not a surprising development.
Any final questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for taking time.
Thank you again.